Aren't you tired of your makeup looking really cakey or creasing in the fine lines, especially when someone comes really up close and looks at you? Makeup in my 20s looked completely different from what it is in my late 40s now. Yes, I'm almost 50 now. So today I'm going to be showing you some of the tips that I use on myself as well as my mature clients that make the makeup as close to skin as possible and almost undetectable. I say almost because when you apply makeup on your face, it's still makeup. People can still see it, but how do you make it to look as close to your skin as possible? That's what we will be doing today. That's literally going from this to this. You see, there isn't much makeup. It's just a more polished version of myself. It doesn't look cakey. It's a technique that you can follow for either everyday makeup or for your special occasions. Hi everyone, it's Smitha. Welcome back. I'm so happy you're here watching me and I hope you enjoy this tutorial. And now without further delay, let's begin. For skin prep, there's just two products that I use on a daily basis, a moisturizer and an SPF. Let's begin with the moisturizer, for which I'm going to be using the Confidence in a Cream. This is by IT Cosmetics and is especially fabulous on mature skin. One thing you'll see a lot today is I use my fingers a lot rather than using brushes and other tools. Because when you use your fingers, you need minimal makeup. Your fingers are not going to absorb as much product as maybe a brush would absorb or a sponge would absorb, which means you can use less product on your face. And when you use less product, the chances of it moving is also less, which means chances of creasing is also less. I like to focus the moisturizer in areas where I have those fine lines and dry patches. I go in with a little extra pressure, almost pressing in the moisturizer so it can settle in those pores and fine lines and cement it, so it gives me that smooth surface. Over this moisturizer is where you layer your SPF, and today I'm going to be using, or every day I use Tatcha Silken Sunscreen. This has an SPF of 35. What I do is apply a generous amount all over my face and I bring it down to my neck as well. When I start to massage this in, you will see that it almost will look like it's going to give me a white cast. But it is such a beautiful sunscreen. In a bit, when you keep massaging it, it'll get absorbed in the skin and everything will go back to normal again. So it's not going to give you any flashbacks. That's another thing that you need to look for while buying sunscreens. Make sure it's makeup friendly. Read your reviews and use something that doesn't look one way when you're applying it, and when you step out, it starts to give you white cast or makes your makeup look ashy. And never miss sunscreen. Make sure you always layer your moisturizer with sunscreen. After the sunscreen, that you will apply a primer. If you want your makeup to be super long lasting, more than 6 to 8 hours, then I would recommend a primer. But for every day to run errands and chores, you don't need a primer. Moisturizer should be just fine. If you're going to be using primer, especially with mature skin, I would highly recommend something with silicone in it. Silicone primers will fill in all the pores and the fine lines and smooth out your skin to create that really clean canvas for makeup. But today we're not going to be using a primer. I don't use foundation on an everyday basis. What I use instead is a skin tint mixed with a moisturizer. Yes, I thin it down further. And today I'm going to be using the Say Slip Tint. This also has an SPF of 35, which is great, but you still need SPF. And this is in the shade 4.5. So what I do is take a little bit of that skin tint on my fingertips, and then I mix it with the same moisturizer that I used on my face. And then I'm going to apply it on my face like I would apply any other cream. Just look at that subtle glow that it gives, and it's also covering up most of the spots and scars that I have on my face. I've used very less product, but it has still covered up most of the things that I wanted to cover up. Obviously, I don't want it to be like full coverage. This is everyday makeup, so I still want some of that imperfections to peek through, because remember, you want it to look as close to natural skin as possible. So if you cover up everything, obviously people will know you have makeup on. And also, I did not bring that skin tint down to my neck. Instead, I matched the shade on my face to my neck color. That way, again, you're using minimal makeup. Also observe how I did not use the skin tint around my eyes, because that's where we'll use the concealer. And you don't want to be layering up too much. For concealer, I'm going to be using Milani concealer. This is in the shade 145, which is warm beige. To cover up dark patches or your dark circles or spots, always try to match your concealer shade with your skin tone. If you go any lighter, it's going to start looking ashy. That's because it's going to mix with those blue and purple undertones, and it's going to look great. So always make sure you use a concealer that's a perfect match to your skin tone. And for me, that's Warm Beige in Milani. I almost like to spot correct with it. I apply it in areas where I need that concealer coverage, and I let it sit for a couple minutes until it's a little bit dry and tacky. And that's when I start to blend out with my finger. If you blend out immediately, it's going to shear out. So if you want more coverage, let it sit just for a couple minutes until it's just a tad bit dry. That has covered up beautifully. I'm going to add a little bit of dimension to this. Yes, you can add dimension. You can use color on your face, because when you apply your foundations and concealers, everything looks like one even tone and it looks flat. So you need to bring back some warmth in your face. I'm going to start with adding some warmth in my face, for which I'm going to be using a foundation stick. This is from Essence and it's in the shade 190. As you can see, it's almost the shade of my skin, but just a tad warmer, because we want to keep it very closely matching to the skin, but still give that dimension. If you use anything darker than this, then it makes it very obvious that you have makeup on your face. So I'm going to be using something that's just one shade deeper than my skin tone. And I'm going to be using it in the usual areas, on my cheekbone, in the sides of my nose, and in my jawline. This is lightweight, and as you can see, that isn't too dark, so it's going to blend beautifully into my skin. And again, I'm blending everything out with my finger. Another nice thing about this stick is it's a foundation stick, which means it's going to be lighter than a contour stick. So it's going to blend well beautifully with the skin tint that we have, and it's not going to look obvious. You can see how quickly I was able to blend that out. And right about that on my cheekbone, I'm going to add a little bit of blush just to brighten up everything. And today I'm going to be using Estee Lauder Dewy Cheek Tint. Again, this is a cheek tint in the shade Elevator Smile. Again, because this is a tint, it's going to be extremely light. I'm just taking a little bit in the back of my hand, just that much. And I'm going to be taking it with my fingers. See how beautifully that blends into the skin, and it doesn't look as bright as how it came out from the tube. So I'm going to apply this on the high points of my cheeks, very lightly dabbing it. That is a beautiful everyday shade, and it is so light. And of course, it's a personal preference. If you want more, you can always layer up, but I like to keep it really nice and rosy and fresh. More than a blush, it almost looks like a sunburn, and which is precisely the kind of look that we're going for anyway. I'm going to lightly set my face with powder, and I'm going to use a powder that's very lightly sifted. This is the original mineral veil from Bare Minerals, and they have this jumbo one now, which is fantastic. I'm going to take it with a smaller powder brush, and I'm going to focus the powder in areas where my makeup might move or crease, which is mostly in my T-zone. And I'm going to very lightly set my face. I want that glow to show through in my face, so I'm not going to be setting my entire face. I'm mostly focusing this in the T-zone. That's pretty much it for the base. Let's move on to brows and eyes. I feel brows is such a personal preference, but again, to make it look very natural, I just take my brow pencil. This is precisely my brow from Benefit in the shade 4.5. All I do is use this spoolie to brush my brow hair upward, just like that, and I fill in just the sparse areas. Now again, this is a personal choice because I have such thick brows. If you have thinner or sparse brows, you can use a powder shadow or a brow pencil. If you don't want to use a brow pencil, go with a powder brow product as opposed to a pomade. Pomade looks very obvious, so try to avoid that at any cost if you want to go for that very natural look. That literally took me 1 minute, and here's a quick tip. Never fill the inner part of your brows to keep it looking natural. The moment you do that, it starts to look boxy. And if you have hooded eyes, that's going to weigh down on your hooded eyes further. So keep it natural and fluffy and neat. For the eye part, it's super easy. Try to choose a shade that's a close match to your skin tone, but just a tad bit deeper. For me, it's going to be this light brown shade from the Pouring palette. This is from Ofra Cosmetics, and it was my collaboration with them. I'm going to take it with a small blending brush. I'm going to touch and feel my socket area, and that's where I'm going to blend this out, just like that. See how it's adding just a little bit of color? It's not too much. It's just defining the crease, and that's exactly what we want to wake up our eyes. And then I'm going to dip a smaller fluffy brush in the same eyeshadow and define my lower lash line as well, just smoking it out throughout my lower lash line. And then I'm going to take a little bit of loose powder. You can use any brush. I'm just using a blending brush here. And I'm going to clean up the lid space with this. That's just going to bring some brightness into your eyes, but make sure you keep it in the inner half of the lid. I'm using this black pencil from One Size, and I'm going to line just the upper waterline to lift my eye. And then I'm going to finish up with some mascara. This is the L'Oreal Extensionist mascara. Usually I apply mascara both to my top as well as bottom lashes, but today, because we want to keep it as natural as possible, I'm applying it just to my top lashes. And here's another thing that I do for every day. I just apply mascara to the tips of my lashes. I don't apply it from the root to the tips because that can weigh down on your lash hair. That's a subtle but still a big difference. My everyday lipstick is actually a lip liner. This is Wherever Walnut by Makeup Forever. All I do is just scribble it right in the center. Just like that. And I smudge it out with my finger. I don't clean up the edges. I don't want it to look made up. I just want it to look like my lips has a really sweet rosy hue. That's pretty much it, my friends. Now, whether you're indoors or in the sun, you don't have to worry about your makeup creasing or feeling cakey or feeling conscious when someone comes really close to you and looks at your face. Like literally, that has happened to me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the description box for all of the products that I used in today's tutorial. I love you guys so much, and I will see you soon with a brand new one. Bye guys.